Welcome back. You're still watching tonight, and just remind you that tonight we'll not have the news gang because we are paving way for this conversation with the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport. He's speaking about the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, privately initiated a project, or proposal rather, by Adani Airport Holdings. And as we speak, the Cabinet Secretary says that they are on stage 13. 7 to go up until that deal is signed, and of course the work to be done. Waziri, we'll be taking some questions from Kenyans shortly, but first, you said that there's a team that went to India for due diligence. You told me that they are from KAA staff,
yeah,
and PPP Directorate.
Yeah, the Attorney General.
Attorney General was there? The Office of the Attorney General was there?
Correct.
We're receiving information that there was nobody from the Attorney General's office.
I would have to confirm, but it's a team of 15 members, senior members of government from different disciplines,
yeah,
to look at feasibility studies in the various
areas. JKA,
yeah,
PPP, Directorate,
yeah.
Who else?
The Attorney General Office. I don't know whether the National Treasury was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Please confirm. We'll get an answer because you're getting information that the Office of the Attorney General was not allowed to travel to India for that due diligence. Please help us understand why. Let's take questions from Kenyans. At Citizen TV Kenya, at Sam Gituku, the hashtag to use is Citizen Tonight. And we will begin with who? This is Gatama, who is saying that ask the CS how much profit KAA gets in a year. It must be around 10 billion, and whether KAA can't implement the infrastructure project as a multi-year project. What is the figure? How much profit does KAA get?
I think KAA profit is in the tune of, let me get the exact number, so that. Can we take the next question?
Okay.
I'll answer.
It's okay. You can find it as you take another question here. On this is, you don't say who you are. What's the urgency with the construction, yet the terms are unfavorable? Why the long tenure? Talking about the 30-year lease. Let's take another question. Lucy is saying the issue of Adani is just bad. Please ask how they can cancel it if it's untenable. Let's take those three first. And one viewer is asking, why can't KAA be in a position to build the airport in a phased manner? The other one is asking about this period, the concession period of 30 years is too long.
Like we said, there is the option of KAA building the airport on government balance sheet. And we are all aware that the fiscal space is basically not there. Given today's profit over JKIA and the fact that they run operations in all the other airports, including Mombasa, Kisumu, Malindi, Ukunda, and all the other airports, we do not have capacity for JKIA to run and build a new airport for that kind of investment of 1.8 billion on their balance sheet, and therefore they would have to be supported by government. To the extent that we all know where we are on the fiscal space with the government balance sheet today, it's not a possibility. So it's one thing to either live with the airport or stay with the airport that we have, or develop like what we see today in the expressway, which was developed on a PPP framework. And I think most of Kenyans are enjoying that service today. Okay,
especially the ones that are motorist, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about, because even as you speak about that, the question about the lease of 30 years or the concession of 30 years, isn't that too long?
The way PPP works, Kituku and Kenyans, is that we give you a period to earn back on your investment. So to the extent that we make it shorter, would the bankability of the project, or the project to be bankable for financial institution to give you the 70%, you would have to levy more charge to be able to quickly finance. It's the way if you're buying a house,
yep,
you can choose to pay quickly and pay it in 5 years, but you can choose to pay it slowly and afford to pay over a long period of time. If we were to build our SGR with a loan payable over 50 years, that would really be comfortable for the government and possibly for the kind of tariffs we charge. So it's a question of affordability. So that the interplay between service charge at the airport, the debt equity ratio, the return on equity, are the drivers which will tell you, do you do 18 years, do you do 20 years? Okay. Maybe we could even allow 40 years and charge a very low fee and make our airport more competitive. So these are kind of variables which determine the service charge or the tariff that we charge the customers.
What would be the interest of Adani after the 30 years? The
interest of Adani, it's build a private initiated proposal on build, operate, and hand over to government. So after 30 years, they have earned back their money, they hand over to government and move out.
So 100% reverts to government?
100% reverts to government in 30 years.
You may have heard this, that there will be an 18%
Absolutely not.
interest.
No.
For eternity?
No.
It doesn't exist?
It comes back to government 100%.
Okay. Let's take another question from viewers. There's a question Lucy is asking about what it would take to cancel. Think about that, but also ask the CS why they didn't propose to Adani the option to build a completely new airport in Konza or something like that and not interfere with an existing facility that is critical. You want to take that?
When you do that feasibility study that we did talk about, you look at the options of allowing a private investor to build an airport that competes with us very close. The issue of 100 kilometers to build in Konza and basically run a very efficient modern airport and end up closing KAA in the next 3 years. What do you then do with the staff? What do you do with the infrastructure? What do you do with the aging? And we cannot support that. So you look at all those options in evaluating, do we build a competing airport next to KAA using a private sector? And what then happens if you run a parallel between Safaricom and Telecom Kenya today, where we can be left with an asset of no value and be left with all the staff that we are not able even to pay surveillance allowance?
Interesting. Let's take another question. And this is from Mugera. You're saying that, good evening. My name is Mugera. Since the CS has avoided answering the question on why PIP and not open tendering, please ask him why Adani cannot do a new airport elsewhere and leave JKL. I think that's what you just answered. Let's take another one. You don't say who you are. Kenya upgrade lasting 30 years to cost $1.85 billion, while a whole new airport in Rwanda to be completed by 2026 will cost $2 billion. Help us, what is the difference between the airport in Bugesera, Rwanda, and what we want to do with JKA?
The Bugesera, Rwanda airport is a 14 million capacity airport at about, what, 1.3 billion? We're talking about a 30 million capacity airport at 1.8. So you're talking about really two different capacity airports. So that's the reason why we are looking. Today, Kenya's airport has a capacity up to 8.8 million customers. And we are already exceeding that. Yep. So we are targeting to do an airport which by the time it is being handed over back to us, we still have some capacity. Of course, subject to what happens if we strike our oil and do all the great things in tourism, we could be looking at building. What we are still negotiating is to have a clause which basically say if the traffic envisaged exceed the numbers for the return on investment, then what we should be able to do is to be allowed to build a second airport within whatever distance, because you do know that there was a clause that you did read out at 100 kilometers. But don't forget that if there's a boom and we need the traffic growth to exceed the airport that Adani is building, then we'll have a clause in this concession agreement that we are negotiating that should be able to allow us to either get a second concessionaire and be able to get another facility.
Okay, so it's not all lost.
Yeah.
Let's take another question. This is Machokayo saying, how come he was able to give the Adani contract to KAA staff, but unwilling to provide the same to the Senate?
Kituku, what we did prosecute in Senate today was the concern that there are two court cases, one by Isaac Lango Guyo versus KAA and the National Treasury, which was filed sometimes in July. And we were served this morning by LSK and Kenya National Human Rights Commission versus KAA and 5 others. And we wanted to, when we went to the Senate this morning, we were basically seeking, by way of guidance, whether that would amount to sub judice. And to the extent that was clarified and a ruling was given, we will be providing those documents tomorrow. You
truly didn't have the documents with you at the time?
We needed to seek that clarification first before, because like I said, the independence and the fact that if there's a court ruling, we wanted to be very clear that, and they are voluminous documents. So with that clarity, we did seek leave to appear again tomorrow and present the documents.
You've spoken about members of staff at the GKIA, and if you're to build another airport elsewhere, you don't know what you do with them. In some of the documents presented by Adani, and also the draft contract that Citizen TV has seen, it talks about, one of them says that once the concession begins, Adani would give an offer to existing employees, and they'll have 1 month to agree to it or not. If they disagree with it, then Adani will have no role with their employment status, and they would have to be taken away by KAA. What is in the best interest of workers that you will do to ensure the interests are safeguarded? Because,
Kituku, again, I've said we are negotiating these documents. There is Adani position, there is JKI position. I don't know whether you have seen, what you have seen, it could be Adani's proposal, the initial proposal. What was JKI position, and has that item been agreed on? Today, what we've agreed on the staff and subject to building consensus until the document is ready for signing is that the staff will have 3 options. One, if Adani takes our staff, they'll take them on better terms than is obtaining today at KAA.
Better terms.
Better terms. That is the clause that has been agreed. The staff could opt then to remain at KAA because KAA will still be running the other airports. Number 3, the staff could opt to take an offer to not to remain with KAA or not to move to Adani, and that offer will also be available. But to the extent,
what does that mean? The last one.
That basically means we can also give the staff an option. We are giving the staff an option to exit if they wish, and those are staff options.
So even if you put that in writing, once the concession begins, Adani has all the rights, exclusive rights indeed.
You know, the concessionaire, which is JKIA, is really going to work with Adani because we're giving terms to Adani as agreed. And until you really, even the design of the airport, of course, once the staff move, like, let me use an analogy which has run successfully in this country. I used to work in telecom, and the staff who moved to Safaricom basically will have to see the staff terms before they opt to move. And once you take the option to move and you are moving on better terms, then those who remain basically runs JKIA and runs the other airports. But there can also be staff who feel like, I've been in this business for long and I want to move on, and that option is available for them to exit under early retirement terms. Yeah.
I'm waiting for some more questions from Kenyans, but as we do so, what are the interests? Is there any interest in any Kenyan in Adani?
Not that I'm aware of, because I think when we finish the due diligence, we will get to really who is putting in the equity. That is when, because the rest is debt, then there'll be certainly full disclosure, because Kituku, you'll also appreciate the fact that when serious institutional AAA investment grade banks are financing a facility like this, they look at all sorts of risks. And to the extent that they see a risk, they will not want to put in their equity. So there's got to be their debt, so there's got to be full disclosure of all the investors to be able to source for that 70% debt. Yeah.
All right, let's take a few more questions that you are sharing with us on different platforms. And this is who? Okay, we'll get it as we progress in terms of what are the issues that Kenyans have. But Waziri, then, what are the risks that along the way, it's 5 years later, there's change of government, and the president of the government then decides we should actually opt out of this concession?
Come again, let me understand that question.
I'm saying, what if there's change of regime, and the new government comes and says we need to review terms with the option of exiting this concession? What are the risks? And I ask this question because if you're to reflect on the Greenfield terminal, the deals, the contracts were signed. Construction, the contractors had already assembled what they needed on site, but then it was cancelled in March 2016. The government of Kenya lost at least 4.5 billion shillings, and they're required to pay an extra 600 million shillings. What are the risks with Adani for the government of Kenya and the people of Kenya?
The risk on Adani and for mega projects like this would normally be fully covered by what you call a letter of support, which will be one of the conditions precedent to financial close. What this means, Kituku, is that big projects which are done by private investors have to be secured by government so that there is perpetuity, and when government changes, a political event, if it happens, Adani could then opt to move out and they will be compensated by the government. So it transcends governments. And it cannot suddenly reach financial close before we get to do a letter of support.
Letter of support. Yeah. You've said that if there's a political event, Adani would have to be compensated. What does that look like in layman's terms?
The political event would basically be, it's a way of saying we are a politically mature economy, and government transcending and change of governments will not impact on businesses. So it gives comfort to investors who come to do mega projects in our country to be assured that we are a politically mature country. We do things above board, and whichever government comes on board will respect and support the investors in the country. And that is what makes...
And if they don't, what is the cost implication of the government of Kenya?
The cost implication would then mean for all projects in energy, where again I've come from, we give letter of support. And if there was interference, the investor, the concessionaire could walk out and the government will take over the project. So
for instance, Adani is to cost 1.8, the project will cost $1.8 billion.
Correct.
So assuming it's 5 years and there's a situation.
Don't forget that the 1.8 is a mixture of 30% debt and 70%, 70% debt and 30% equity. So if they were to walk out, you would want to look at whether the banks will sustain the facility with government subject to the headroom, and the equity would have to be paid. So the government will have to look for financing to kind of take over the equity and sustain the lenders. So all those are provided in the instruments that we are working on.
And there's the question about the arbitration is to happen in Singapore, UAE, or London through Singapore International Arbitration Center. And some feel this is too far for Kenya. How does justice look like in such a situation?
Arbitration for, again, mega projects would want a neutral seat for arbitration. You don't want arbitration to happen in the seat of the concessionaire, nor do you want it to happen in Kenya. So you want to go to a neutral ground like London, maybe the East African Court of Arbitration, Singapore. It is just giving comfort again to the investment-grade banks who are putting in equity that there will be a fair ground if we have to discuss issues of disputes.
Are you comfortable with Singapore?
The three options are there. I think we are settling for London.
London. Okay. But the arbitrator is still Singapore International Arbitration Center, isn't it? That's the proposal by Adani. That
was the proposal by Adani. There will then be the proposal from Kenya and what has been agreed on. And like I've said, we are agreeing on London sit for arbitration.
Okay, let's take another question from a viewer here. This time, Sir Jim Chirchir asking, how much revenue is Adani expected to make from the deal annually, multiplied by 30 years versus their $1.8 billion investment? Do you have estimations of the sort of revenues and maybe profits that they're going to make every year?
I would love to certainly, Kituku, look at numbers, because don't forget that Adani are coming in to rebuild our airport. There will be a new runway. There will be, that will run up to 30,000 million capacity. There will be certainly the city-side facilities, which will be built on some 30 acres piece of land that is not part of the concession. And therefore, the revenues will basically go up as we ramp up the capacity of the airport. It's important to note here that the fees, the service fees which is paid at the airport, there's a charter which controls how much they should be charging, to the extent that if they ramp up, then it impacts on the return on the investment, and therefore the length of the 30-year concession period. But so that we are a competitive destination, because don't forget, Tanzania is building a good airport, Ethiopia is building a good airport, Rwanda is building a good airport. We have to make sure that our rates are competitive.
Right.
So to a very good extent, we can look at the numbers as they ramp up the capacity to 30 million. What the financial model does, Kituku, is to factor in the return on equity at a percentage to be agreed. I think the Adani started at 18%. The last I saw on the negotiation was at 16%. We had brought it down to 16%. But the debt side will be the market rate that we are able to all work together and get. And therefore, all these will determine what the revenues to Adani will be. But more importantly, they will have to invest. They are also investing to build a new terminal. They are investing to build a new runway, and the various exits that are...
So those are rates that you're describing, but is there, in absolute terms, the projected revenues and profits?
We can, those are numbers, and they'll be straightforward to work. I don't have the numbers right here now,
you don't have the numbers
but they're
now.
Fairly straightforward to work under those variables.
Okay. There are a few pending questions. So was there any other privately initiated proposal that was received by KAA?
Like I've said, Kituku, we've not received one, and I wish we could receive one, because it helps in terms of playing competitive one against the other. But as we speak today, we are only aware of Adani. And
you didn't see any necessity? I know you were not the cabinet secretary at that time for transport and roads, but you were in cabinet. There was no necessity to even invite others for comparison purposes, as you say?
Like I've basically shown you the process. We are taking this through a process. And until we reach the signing stage, if we got another proposal, it will be played against this.
Yet, Waziri, yes, that's the process as per the law, but it's not mandatory that every PIP you receive, you have to take it through the process, is it?
You know, look at a privately initiated proposal. It is privately, it basically means that it is privately initiated. So that I'm saying I want to come to Kenya.
And I get that. What I'm asking about is it mandatory, or in the spirit of transparency, wouldn't have the government pursued, because your predecessor promised on 23rd of June 2023 that an advert would be out inviting expression of interest. It didn't come out. In December 2023, he said as much. There would be an advert by mid of January 2024. It never came out. Instead, what we saw is a PIP.
I think once we receive the PIP, the point, in all fairness, and even the process we are running under the PIP is expensive. It's expensive because as we do due diligence on Adani, they are doing due diligence on Kenya. And therefore, as to whether we reach the end of the runway, if we got another privately initiated it will not be like we are being unfair to them that they are spending money. What we're looking at, Kituku, is the return on equity. Are the tariffs going to be reasonable to ensure that Kenya is competitive as an airport compared to the regional airports? We are an anchor state, as it were, given the fact that we have Mombasa and the northern corridor, which services the eastern part of the Uganda, rather Congo, and so on and so forth. And therefore, can we be that competitive anchor state both on road, rail, and air transport? And then so, really, we have to ensure that our tariffing, and under the PPP Act, like I said, this act is available for all, and will just be, I'll be appearing. I think we should have been doing this, and I want to really make myself available, subject to the concerns of sub judice, to ensure that we work together on this PPP Act and ensure that, whereas the PPP Act is 2021 approved by Parliament, we all really appreciate and understand what the PPP process entails.
All right. That sounds like Adani is a sure deal. It's coming. It's here.
I don't think so. Where, of course, if they go through the due process and it's good for Kenya, it's good for Adani, it's a win-win, why not? Okay.
There was a pending question. Who from the Office of the Attorney General was in India?
Allow me, if I'm not taking too much time, to basically read one of the step one from where the privately initiated investment proposal was sent to us on that particular date, and they paid the mandatory fees of $50,000 US. The contracting authority then conducted an initial review of the proposal against key parameters under the PPP Act, including value for money. The contracting authority then sent the proposal to the PPP Directorate for further evaluation. On stage number 5, the PPP Directorate set up evaluation committee, including relevant government agencies, to review the proposal. That is where there's a team which you don't keep on nominating every day. So there's a team who have been walking this journey to ensure that as the proponent or KAA do what they must do and submit to the technical committee at the PPP Secretariat, they are guided accordingly within the due process of the law, and then that is the process. And so there is a committee.
That's why I believe what you're saying. But the question I'm asking is, if the representative of Attorney General, there reports that they're not allowed to travel, how then can you assure yourselves that you're catered for in legal matters?
Let me say this. I personally talked to the Attorney General. I was in China, and I don't know whether somebody from the AG traveled or not. But don't forget that there'll be concurrence with the Attorney General at various steps of this process. And therefore, the concession agreement, you know, there's been an argument where should the AG be involved or should they stay out and be independent so that when they review, they are not seen to have been part of the process. So we could just be really...
What's your opinion? What should happen?
What has tended to happen with big projects is you would want somebody to walk the journey so that they understand, even though they are going to give an independent opinion of the whole thing. If they are not part of the journey, because these are very, like you've seen the process, a long journey, if they are not part of the journey, at the time of giving a legal opinion, they will almost have to be walked through the whole journey, and it will take time for them to understand. So it's neither here nor there. They want to take time later on to understand the whole concession final draft document before it goes for final approval. Then they can totally be independent and review the document and give their own independent opinion. But they can walk the journey and understand this complex process, and therefore, at the time of giving legal opinion, they have, to the extent that they understand the project, it becomes easy for them to give a legal opinion in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Otherwise, the legal opinion might be procured in 2 months.
Interesting. I think we have to leave it at that. But there's a question here. Let me just say, why was this project not open to other partners such as AFDB who had expressed interest? Why was the tender not floated and operated on a shrouded mystery? Why is it that only Adani was given this privilege? I think you've tackled about Adani, but having more partners involved, including AFDB. What's your answer?
I think, I don't know how many private companies run private airports like Adani runs maybe 14 airports around the world today, and I've mentioned a few, including Ahmedabad, including Navi Mumbai, where they're building a 90 million capacity airport. But you seek opportunities to invest in the area of your competence, and Adani is in airports. To the extent that there is another private investor who manages airport, even if AFDB were to really invest, they'll possibly be investing under the umbrella of an operator who knows how to run airport, because AFDB is a bank. They can invest by putting in debt.
Okay.
They can invest by putting in equity, and this equity of 30% could end up being a consortium eventually. And therefore, you remember you asked me the name of who are the equity, who are in this equity 30%. It will come out. It could possibly be involving the Abu Dhabi. It can have investors that due diligence will bring out, and suddenly there would have to be solid investors to the extent that the debt side will not have any cause of concern not to put in the 70%, because the project may not then reach financial close, and it will collapse.
Who would it be in Abu Dhabi?
I don't know majorly most of the investors in Abu Dhabi, but you know, there is a lot of pension funds managed under the Abu Dhabi fund, and I did show you something on even at Heathrow Airport, who are the investors. But I can see the Saudi Investment Fund coming in, which is possibly a pension fund and all that kind of investment. But a lot of work will have to be done to mobilize the 70% debt anyway.
Thank you so much, Waziri. Waziri Davis Chirchir, the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport, for making time for us to have this conversation. Many questions still remain, and I'm sure you'll be giving us an opportunity to find the answers.
Thank you.
And all the best with the rest of the negotiations and also the ultimate decision that is taken by the contracting authority.